I think you mentioned a lot of things. I'm not sure if how much of these things I'm going to talk about, but it's always a little difficult to actually come and say this is the journey that we went on as a company, and it's been 5 years now. So what I will propose is I'm going to go through a bunch of different things, and what I'll propose is if you guys have one special topic that you want to focus on, either while I'm speaking, as we said, or at the end, we can just zoom in on that. So there was this really, really cool series of lectures from Stanford where they interviewed a whole bunch of pretty important entrepreneurs and leaders and thought leaders in Silicon Valley. And one of them was Eric Schmidt, who sort of re-emphasized that warning that everything breaks at every order of magnitude, meaning process breaks, technology breaks, culture breaks, right? And I think we experienced that on so many different levels as we grew the company from a few thousand photographers in 2010 to 17 million, 18 million photographers all over the world today. From 4 guys in my living room hacking on random stuff and coming up with crazy ideas, talking about disruption and revolutionizing this and that, like every startup does in the beginning, to 75 people, as Ada said, on 2 continents in 3 different locations, different time zones. Our San Francisco office is 9 hours away. A whole set of new challenges were brought up just by having that office. And so I want to share some of these lessons that we've learned, some of the tips that have helped me both as a founder as well as a CTO, and also just as someone who's very much into process in particular. Before we go into detail, just for those that don't know us, so IAM is a community and a marketplace for photographers. We, again, started the company late 2010, early 2011. We've grown it to 17 million photographers, and what we do is really we celebrate photography. We want to help amateurs, people who have discovered this passion they have for taking photos. We want to help them become better, learn, get discovered, get published, get exhibited. We produce a magazine that is highly acclaimed. We do worldwide exhibitions. Of course, we have our apps and photo sharing and photo editing and all that stuff, but it's really a movement. It's a global movement of millions of people that have become passionate photographers through IM. And one interesting thing happened a couple of years ago. As this sort of evolution came on, a lot of photographers were like, what's next? I'm getting these likes, I'm getting these comments on my photos, I'm getting all of these followers, but what's the next, how do I level up, right? And at the same time, we had all of these brands and agencies and businesses and companies coming to us and going like, you have such amazing content, authentic content that is so different than everything else that we can license out there. Can we buy these images? Can we engage with your community? And for us, it was like a very, very natural evolution to say, well, let's help photographers make money with their photos. So we launched our marketplace. We pay out quite a bit of money to thousands and thousands of photographers that are now suddenly with their snapshots from their phones are actually making money and have moved towards becoming more and more professional photographers. The really cool thing is, or the really challenging thing at the same time, is that the stock industry is quite limited in terms of how much content they have for a bunch of reasons. One of them is that their processes are really, really old. The way they source content is kind of old-fashioned. The way they process content, it takes several weeks for every single photo to make it from the minute a photographer adds it to one of those sites to the minute it's actually available for sale. The reason being, it has to go through a bunch of different steps. One of them is someone has to look at the photo and decide whether it's good or not. Someone has to look at the photo and decide if it's stolen or not. Someone has to actually go and keyword the photo. Costs quite a bit of money and is really challenging to, is a really big challenge to actually do at scale. So what they did is they limited the kind of content that they have, and they limited the number of photographers that they have. And we were saying we want to open this up to the entire world. We want every single person, we want to go for the long tail, Every single person, every one of you here has a camera roll that has 100 photos, 1,000 photos, and I'm pretty sure every one of you has at least one really, really good photo there. And that photo could make you money, that photo could get you published, that photo could be picked up by press for some reason. The problem is that it's very hard to discover. So we realized that we had to invest in technology as well. And we went from a company that is building a marketplace and a community with quite a solid technological base to a company that had to innovate on the cutting edge of computer vision, of deep learning. And over the last few years, we've built and scaled up an R&D team, and we have managed to develop two really interesting features of that computer vision that we have. One of them is our keywording technology, which allows us to recognize something like 20,000 different individual concepts in a photo, meaning a photo comes into IM, within milliseconds, we actually have it fully keyworded, fully available for search. The other thing, which is almost more interesting, is we've taught our AI to understand beauty. We've taught our AI to understand what is a beautiful photo, what is a sellable photo, what is a marketable photo, simply by looking at the pixels. And that means 1 billion photos can be uploaded to IM within minutes, maybe a little more. We would actually have keyworded those 1 billion photos. We have sorted them, and we found that there's 10,000 skateboarding photos, and of those 10,000, there's 100 that will go viral on Twitter. And we can give that information further to agencies, to brands, and to other potential buyers, right? So that's really, in a nutshell, what we do. And over the past 5 years, like I said, a couple of things are really, really clear. I have absolutely zero skills in illustrating, as this would show you. And life was much easier when we were 4 people. Life was way, way, way easier. Paul Graham has this really cool article on the roller coaster life of a startup, and I think, I hope a bunch of you have read it. If not, you should definitely look it up. And it's very true. It always looks like it's to the right and to north basically, but that's never the case. There's so many pitfalls, so many crashes, so many errors that you have, and at the end of the day, what I wanted to share here initially, before talking more about the process, is there's a few very, very easy lessons and sort of low-hanging fruits that have worked well for me over the past years. First of all, we're hiring. You see that at the very end of every single presentation, and it's sort of always like an afterthought. Do I put a thank you slide, or do I put a we're hiring slide? And the fact of the matter is, we're hiring. I'm looking for backend engineers, I'm looking for product designers, I'm looking for computer vision researchers, iOS developers, Android developers. We're always hiring. And to me, what I learned was I'm never going to hire the perfect person when I need them. I'm going to hire the perfect person when I don't need them. So I'm always looking. If you want to build the best possible team, then you cannot just say, this is our budget and this is the project, we need 2 more people, let's go and find the best 2 people. You need to be always open, and you will find a way to actually hire the best people. Second thing, engineers probably will not like this, but the tech stack does not matter. I have yet to hear of one single company that failed because they used PHP. Doesn't happen. It's totally, totally irrelevant. The thing that we learned over the past couple of years is, again, focus on the bigger problems, because engineers would love to always work with the latest tech. Always try out the next framework, always try out the next libraries, always go for, switch from AWS to whatever. Let's play with Google for a bit. Let's go to Azure because it's fun. Let's jump on Docker because containers are cool. Let's go microservices. It never really matters, and the reality is you have to be reasonable about this. So for me, the simple rule that we typically have is, if you want to build something in a different library, in a different language, using a different methodology, as long as there's one other person that at the company that can sort of say, go for it, I'm cool with it. There's this really interesting story by this one friendly company of ours, let's say, that at some point switched to microservices. Their entire backend architecture was microservices. And I was talking to one of their engineering directors. And at some point, they were running something like 7,000 to 8,000 microservices throughout their infrastructure. And whenever an employee left, they would have to rewrite 2 to 3 microservices on average per employee who left. And that's kind of insane. So it has to be a bit of a balance. From my perspective, I think one of the funniest stories must have been around 3 years ago, when there was this PR fiasco by a fellow photography company, and suddenly we saw something like 30x growth across the board overnight. So we went to around a couple 100,000 signups a day within 24 hours. Everything broke, literally everything broke. We were 2 engineers that was back when our entire infrastructure was a PHP monolith. So we were two engineers working across, around the clock, and it somehow worked. We survived. Of course, if we had had better monitoring, if we had had, auto scaling in place, if we had had some, slightly better service-oriented architecture than literally booting up instances, commenting out code to turn off features, and then typing in the internal IP addresses on a sort of little controller that we'd built to just turn this instance on and this instance off. It's very manual, very stupid work, but at the end of the day, it worked and we survived. And the reality is we couldn't have, if we had over-optimized, if we had invested so much time in building the perfect architecture at the very beginning, we probably wouldn't have gotten to that point where we had a product that people cared for and wanted. And along the same lines as the tech stacks, I think tools are just that. Tools are tools. People use Slack nowadays. We use Slack. People use HipChat before that. No big difference. GitHub, if you want for issues, is pretty okay. If you want to go to Jira, go to Jira. I think it's really important to be aware of what tools are. Tools are a resource for people to be very, very productive, a resource for people to be communicative and transparent in the work that they do. We recently switched to Jira, half a year ago, I think, something like that, pretty much across the organization. My absolute most productive engineering team will not. They just will not switch to Jira. And they make it a point of pushing their issues on GitHub and of actually not listening to tickets that are created on Jira. And they actually went and wrote something, a little hook that would copy the tickets. I mean, who cares if it's working, right? And along the lines of if it's working, this sort of is a Facebook slogan, I think. Done is better than perfect. And I use a lot of slogans in my slides and metaphors. I kind of like that. And it is true. Our motto for the first 2.5 years was fuck it, ship it. And it worked, right? If the code runs, if it offers 1% improvement, ship it. Because we're iterating, we're very fast. And this is sort of what makes a startup different, I think, than a large corporation. It's the fact that we're reckless. It's the fact that we will fail way more often, but we will succeed. At some point, we have more successes than failures, hopefully. And that is the point when you start to get a little more, serious, a little more formal, I think. And speaking of slogans, to me, this is typically used for big data, the 4 V's of big data, and it also represents, I think, growth at a company. If you hit that sort of point of complexion where you've grown so far that you have variety, meaning you have a bunch of processes, you have a bunch of different scopes and projects, and you have a bunch of different people, and you have velocity where things are happening very fast, where you need to adapt constantly, and of course volume, because there's way too many people, different personalities, and you have to sort of account for all of that, and veracity, right? And the point is, when you hit these points, when you hit these 4 V's, if you want, things start to change a little bit. The idea of doing a stand-up with the whole team just doesn't work anymore. The idea of shipping code at will doesn't work anymore. The idea of just merging your own pull requests and deploying them on the fly, it doesn't work anymore. And unfortunately, or I guess fortunately, something like meetings become very, very necessary. And this is sort of old school, right? People are like, we don't need meetings. We do no meeting Wednesdays and Thursdays and no pants Fridays. Fair enough, you can do whatever you want. But at the end of the day, what I've learned is that meetings are crucial, and they will work if they are done right. And I think for them to be done right, there needs to be 2 things. One is, as an engineer, you generally hate meetings. And the main reason you hate meetings is that there's that sense of lack of understanding from the manager that comes and says, can we talk for 10 minutes? And doesn't realize that 10 minutes actually has taken you out of your flow, and you'll need another 2 hours to get back into it. So scheduling the meetings is very important. Giving them regularity is very important. So what we do, for example, or what I do is I try to have a very, very regular cadence of meetings that I typically set up either in the morning, at noon, or in the evening, leaving these 2 blocks, morning to noon and early afternoon to evening, empty for other people. And it starts with me, right? So I've started trying to get some form of no meeting days going, or at least blocks of time where I can do some actual proper work. Doesn't work all the time, but if you do that, if you lead by example, then you also make it available to the team, make it understandable to the team that that's okay. And the second part is, if there's nothing to meet about, then the meetings get cancelled. So there has to be an agenda, there have to be actionables, and trying to avoid update meetings as much as possible. So we try to avoid sitting down in a room and going through a checklist of, did you do this, did you do that, did you do that? There are tools for that. So when we use the iceberg metaphor quite a bit, we typically use it more for imagery. 2 trillion photos were shared online last year. A small fraction of that is actually available, discoverable, searchable. But it's also for development, right? And regardless of how smooth an operation you're running and how structured you are, every single project you're running is an iceberg. There's the known knowns, the tip of the iceberg. You know what's there, you know how it will work. There's the known unknowns, the fact that you know that underneath that iceberg there's something big. And then there's the unknown knowns, which are communication breakdowns. We'll get to that in a second. And there's the unknown unknowns, and that's the catastrophe. I have yet to see a single development project where, regardless of how smooth it goes, at the very end, we still have to push into a couple of hours into the evening to just manage to ship on time. Never really happens. And the same with scope, right? Scope is always changing. It's always kind of a mess. And what I sort of liken it to is the fog of war from gaming, right? You can see very, very short distance in front of you. You sort of know what's beyond that, and beyond that you have absolutely no idea. And as you grow, we had that quite a bit with research and development, which is a totally different beast, right? With software development, with engineering, it's one thing. With R&D, you have absolutely no idea what's going on in the middle. So what I try to do is I try to define and clarify the process before and the process after. And then you trust the team to do the stuff in the middle, whether it be design, whether it be training a new keyword computer vision model. Sometimes it converges in 2 days, sometimes it takes a month. We don't know, and we really can't predict that. But we know exactly what we need to do before. We know exactly what we need to do after. And that sort of just minimizes the level of uncertainty. Might be very, very stupid, but I write everything down. It's almost an obsession. It's no longer, I don't think it's actually normal anymore, the way I do it. But it does help. It helps quite a bit because it tells people that you're serious about it. It tells people that you want to be transparent about it. So of course, writing and sharing everything. And it sets a baseline that everyone agrees upon. There's nothing worse than coming out of a meeting or coming out of a sprint or coming out of a quarter where people are sitting there and going like, was that what we wanted to build or not? You should have it. You should have it down. And it's pretty easy, right? I think if anyone is into managing engineers, Rands is an amazing resource. Rands is a pseudonym for an engineering director out in the Valley. And he talks a lot about the 4 Ps, right? And the 4 Ps are sort of the counterbalance to the 4 Vs. Purpose. Purpose is the foundation of everything that you do. As Lewis Carroll said, if you don't have or paraphrasing, because he was talking about rabbits and Alice. But what he said was, if you don't have a product vision, then any roadmap will lead you there, right? And that's true. So as you grow, your vision, which is your purpose, why you're doing the whole thing, needs to be crystal clear. It needs to be adapted. It will change. It will evolve because the people that come in will affect it, will influence it. The product that you're building will influence it. The processes that you adapt will influence it. But you have to have a singular purpose. You have to have a vision that is clear and that is clearly available, written down optimally to your team, right? People, to me, are the most important thing in an organization, assuming that you are building something that you know what you're building, right? Product will follow. What you build will come as a result of getting really talented people on board, empowering them and giving them the structure and the tools to do what they need to do. And I should have added the link here, but so I look at management as an orchestra director, right? There's this really amazing TED talk that, again, should have added the link to it, but this is probably one of the best TED talks I've ever seen by an orchestra director, and he's basically comparing management to to conducting, right? You don't need an orchestra director if you're a solo pianist. You just don't. It's a waste of time. If you're a duet, you can riff off of each other and manage it. As the orchestra grows, you will start to need a conductor. But what is the job of a conductor? And if you look at the different kinds of ways people conduct orchestras, there's the very empathetic, very emotional leaders that are almost dancing with their music, and there's the guys that go, we have the process, we have the setup, we've done this before, and I'm just here on stage to occasionally stabilize and right the ship. And the quote for that is, I guess, if you love something, then you have to let it go. And I think that's it. I think the organization needs to be able to run without a director. The director is just there to answer occasional questions to make sure that the rehearsals go well, so that when it's time to perform, there are no questions to ask, right? And that way the director can also go on vacation occasionally, hopefully. So what I want to do is, as the 10th point, because I think I said it's 10 points, right? We have time. Yeah. As the 10th point, I wanted to show you a little bit of how we work today, how we actually organize our organization and our processes. I definitely strongly believe that there is no textbook solution. You know, you could adapt or adopt OKRs, and you will realize that they are not perfect for you. You could go for Scrum, and you will realize that it's an over-engineered process that will hold you back. You could go for V2 MOMS, and you realize that the O doesn't make sense, or the V doesn't make sense, or whatever. So, going back to my amazing illustration skills, on a very high level, we realize that I realize that it's not one process, it's three, right? There's the process of setting goals, there's the process of planning how to get where we want to go, and there's execution. And the big mistake that you tend to do early on is it's not a mistake early on, but it's actually one process. You sit down and you go, this is what I want to build, this is when I'll build it, and this is how I'll do it. And then you start coding. And that's great when you're 4 people. But when you're 75 people, suddenly you have people that are going like, what the hell just happened? Weren't we supposed to do this? Weren't we supposed to do that? So we developed a process called point and shoots. And of course, it's kind of adapted from a bunch of different processes. It's a bunch of different steps in there. But the gist of it is there's a management team at IM. The management team, it's a senior management team. We set the strategy. We are the ones that are speaking to our board. We are the ones that are speaking to the industry. We know the market. We set the strategy and the direction of the company. And we have a leadership team, a large leadership team that represents pretty much the entire organization. That leadership team is tasked with planning how to reach those goals. So we say this is we need to hit, we want to make 10 million in sales this month. And the leadership team has to figure out how to get there. Of course, there's always conversations across the board. We set these goals quarterly. We plan them quarterly. We have an offsite with the leadership team where we sort of finalize things. We try to drill down a little bit into the goals. We go into the individual teams with that leadership team, and then we come up with the projects that will make sense. And these projects are pitched from the organization through their leadership to management effectively. And together, as a large group, we decide these are the projects that we're going to take because we believe they will impact these KPIs and they will lead us ultimately to our goal. So to do this, there's a couple of roles that are needed. We don't need to go into detail in this, but there's the role of the priority owner, which is the senior management. The priority owner owns part of the company. If you look at if you remember the beginning of the slides, there's the community, the business, the technology. At the moment, this is how we split it. So I am the priority owner for technology. So it's my mission to look at the outside, understand what's going on, come up with our technology strategy. And then there's KPI owners. KPI owners are the leadership team that take on some of these goals that we want to achieve and then try to figure out together with their teams, together with the rest of the organization, how we get there, right? That is broken down to project managers, and the beauty of it is anyone can be a project manager because we have everything written down that they need. We have a checklist, effectively, of to-dos that they need to do if they want to run a project. So people can pitch their own project, manage their own project, and as long as they deliver, it's all good. And if they don't deliver, it's not a bad thing per se. It's a learning opportunity for us because then we iterate every quarter. We go through the goals, figure out what went well, what didn't go well, why, and move forward from there. course, the project manager organizes a team. A team is cross-functional, so it's engineers, designers, product owners, it's QA, it's copy, it's legal, it's whoever needs to be in that team. And then we have experts from across the organization that have input that they give into these processes. So when we run a project, it's really 6 steps. 5 of them are until production, and then there's the iteration of it. The first step is proposal, and I know this looks like a Excel sheet done by a McKinsey consultant, maybe less colorful. But sort of it has worked, right? It's worked for us because it's very, very clear, and people need clarity. It's very clear that if you want to propose a project, then you have to be the KPI owner to propose that project, and before you can move forward, you need the approval of the priority owner. Simple as that. If you want to go into the concept phase, then the responsibility for the concept phase is the project manager. We'll get into how we do the concept phase in a second. Same with design, and same with specifications, and same with development. And there are different stakeholders, there are different people that need to be informed at different stages, and there are different people that decide that things are ready to go. So development is really straightforward, right? We do some sort of agile, Scrum, hybrid, Kanban / whatever that pretty much everyone does. Where we had trouble was actually the concept and design phases. The reason being, again, fog of war. If you're doing something creative, it's kind of difficult to specify, right? And then you have a project that needs to launch in 2 months, and we spend a month on the concept. Designers barely get time to design it, and developers sort of have to hack something together that works. And it's always a problem. I think every organization has a form of that problem. So what we adopted there was Google's design sprints, and so far we've seen that they work pretty well for a bunch of reasons. Are you guys familiar with design sprints? No, so mostly. All right. So basically, again, it's just another agile methodology that tries to involve as many people as possible in a pretty structured process for coming up with final concepts, with final wireframes and final designs. And I think the core elements of a design sprint are: the kickoff is a very involved process that sometimes takes several hours, and that has a lot of presentations by every single stakeholder. The way we do it, for example, we have a kickoff on Tuesday that is going to be around 4.5, 5 hours, and we have legal presenting, we have 3 engineering teams presenting, we have designers presenting, we have operations presenting. It's a project that touches on everyone. The cool thing, though, is everyone who will be working on this project at any point in that process will be in that kickoff meeting and will be aware of what is being discussed and what is being prioritized, right? Then we have a smaller project team that typically is product designers, visual designers, user researchers, product analysts, and so on. And these guys go and iterate on the process, but they have a very, very strict cadence of, they have 2-3 days to iterate, come up with some sort of wireframes that we then always test. So we have users coming into our office every Friday. We have 2 to 3 hours of user testing every single Friday. And those results are then evaluated, and then we decide, are we iterating, are we going through this process one more time, or are we happy with the end results, and do we go into visual design? Going into visual design, the exact same thing happens again, right? And what that does is, when you're done, when you go into development, the engineer is already pretty aware of what they're going to build. It's not throwing something over the wall, just like DevOps is no longer a question, it's sort of a fact. Like, you don't build something and throw it to the infrastructure guys. You don't design something and throw it to engineers. You don't come up with a strategy or a concept and throw it over to the product owners. So I think I'm boring him. That's mean. Sorry. So basically, what that offers you is really these 2 very, very important touch points. One is everyone is involved in the beginning, and everyone can give feedback in the end. And this has allowed us to actually go into the development phase with less than perfect specifications, because people know where we're headed, and you will never have perfect specs. So those were the 10 points, but because everything breaks, right? And I'm actually excited about the next step and the next break in the process. To me, there's this pretty amazing quote by Massimo Bottura, who's a very famous chef, and he invented this dessert called "Oops, I dropped the lemon tart." And I don't know if you guys have seen this. It's pretty awesome. You should Google it. I should have played a video. But it's amazing. Chefs are like poets, right? You never realize it, and you didn't used to realize it, but it's kind of interesting. So he literally dropped a lemon tart, and it looked so beautiful that he took that and turned that into his sort of signature dessert at his 3 Michelin star restaurant in I don't know where it is, somewhere in northern Italy. Anyway, and then what he says is that sort of this revelation reminded him that breaking is not the end; it's actually the beginning, right? Because whenever you break, you transform, and then you recreate, and you evolve from that. All right, that's it for me. Thank you very much. Whoa.
Any questions?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was hoping design sprints.
I'm going to do a session on them.
Okay.
I'm going to do a session on design sprints at 3. I guess there was an open spot in the program, so room 2. So anyways, yeah, I wrote the first book on design sprints, so come talk about them. And I'd love to talk to you about it afterwards.
Awesome. All right. Oh.
Yes, so you talked that engineers don't like this technology, doesn't matter. I don't like this, I'm an engineer. But I would like to ask you how it's, so, okay, I can understand that company wants to change the stack and it's good, but what about people? Do they leave and you hire new people, or do they switch? Do you have like success stories that people switch from PHP to Java and everyone is happy, or some people are not happy and they leave?
So it's just to make sure I understood you. So the company doesn't decide the tech stack; the team does, right? So it's not like I go and say we're stopping with Java and moving to Scala tomorrow. That's not the case. What I'm saying is that it actually does not matter for the company, for the business, what technology we're using per se, right? It matters in some special cases when you're fundraising and you have due diligence, or when you're trying to hire someone and there's might be some discrepancy. But what I'm saying is, I built pretty much our entire initial stack, our initial apps and web front end, and I built them in the language that I could build the quickest in, and in the one that I would need the least time to maintain, because it was a limitation of resources. The minute our backend team grew into more than 3 people, they were like, we're not going to continue working on this monolith, and we need to break it down into services, and we need to add monitoring, and that was absolutely okay. It's actually it's part of our DNA. It's very supported, and people love that, because that means if we're booting up a new service, they can actually come and say, I want to write it in Go. And if they get the buy-in from one other person on their team, they don't have to ask management for permission to experiment in a new language. That happens under the hood. So it's more of a positive thing, I think, than a negative one. Technology. I mean, the technology strategy comes, of course, from the leadership team, but the actual technologies used, the stacks used, and so on, it's a team that decides, and the team that has the time and the space to actually come up with ideas. And that's why performance, stability, quality, and thought leadership is always on our quarterly goals. So it's not something that just we hope happens, but we actually find the space for it and find the room for it. And there's people that are responsible effectively for promoting things like publishing open source, promoting things like actually writing and speaking at conferences, and on maintaining our code quality and refactoring regularly, so that we never run into that thing where we realize that our whole code base is 2 years old and we need to stop development for half a year to refactor it.
Can you please explain a bit more how the recruiting process on the tech and product side looks like? Like, do you have assessment kind of rules, the interview sessions, and so on and so forth?
That's a good one. So we do have sort of a basic guideline of initial screen, which could be either face-to-face or call, followed by a hiring manager interview, which is a more detailed, in-depth, from the technical side, more detailed, in-depth technical interview, which is followed by a short task that we send out, and to give us sort of a baseline or common ground to discuss the opening, to discuss the technical chops of the candidate. After which they come in and would get to interview a bunch of people on the team, spend half a day with us, go to lunch, or get a drink in the evening or whatever, just to get a feel for them. And the final step of the process right now is actually another interview with me, where I just sort of recap the whole process and try to go for it. To be fair, though, I mean that's sort of like everyone does it one way or the other. Some people stretch out the test part. Some people do coding bubble sort on a whiteboard, which is kind of insane. I've realized that the best people are the people that I meet and within 10 minutes want to hire and then figure the rest out. And that's sort of been my impression over the past 5 years. This process works. It filters out candidates, and it's okay for doing that. It's also okay for when you have a lot of inbound, that you can actually just filter out profiles. But honestly, CVs are just so old school that that whole process is kind of, I think, very, very outdated. And a lot of it is gut feeling. A lot of it is attitude rather than aptitude, I would say. If the right person comes in, we will find a place for them because they will enrich us as an organization.
So yeah, also about this hiring process.
Yeah.
So if you are constantly hiring, did you encounter this situation when you overhire, like when you hired a lot more people that you needed, or when you really don't have a place for this person? Is it possible that even when you are hiring, you will just don't hire this particular person just because you don't have a place for him?
As a skill set, it's in the beginning it was a little different because you were always looking for more generalists than anything else, right? I haven't had that situation yet, for the simple reason that we're always trying to hire better. So our Android team is an amazing team. It's I would say it'll probably the best Android team in Europe. Like, I would not want anyone to. I wouldn't suggest to anyone to actually try to go and hack against them. Does it mean I'm never hiring for Android? No, I have a position open. I'm always interviewing because I want to hire better people. And I have not yet had that situation where I replaced someone on the team, because we have so much to do that if we find a better candidate, we just have more work for them. That being said, the bar just goes higher and higher. The better people you have, the harder it is for someone to impress us. And we don't hire people that don't impress us, right? And that don't impress, not even me, that don't impress the team. And the team has set such a high bar for quality through their work that it's really tough to actually convince them that you're good enough to join them. And that's really the biggest barrier to entry, I'd say.